Imagine a world where Disney created a sort of kids version and young adult version of Las Vegas. But instead, here we would have a lot less alcohol and sex. Now, that is actually what they did in the 1990s with Pleasure Island. Any Disney fan will recognize the name Pleasure Island from Pinocchio, because in Pinocchio there is a part where Pinocchio and his buddy go off to Pleasure Island. Now, they are literally human trafficked by this old creepy man, and they go to this island with all the other boys for fun and free games and free food and drinks and tobacco. The whole island is a nice way for the villains in the film to get the young boys to become donkeys, and then they sell them to the slave mines, where they are in the mines for the rest of their lives. It's a really, really dark scene in a Disney movie, so if you watch it back, it's really dark, and some of the dialogue is pretty creepy about what they say about the kids. But we're not going to play any of that here because I'm not trying to get Disney copyright here. Now, luckily, Michael Eisner did not make a front for child slaves. Instead, they made it a weird Las Vegas nightlife experience that would have a lot of famous people, including Michael Eisner himself and George Lucas and former US President Jimmy Carter, attending a few times. This is the story of Disney's bizarre Pleasure Island. Now, before I can even really tell you about this island, I must let you know who this Michael Eisner is. Michael Eisner was the Disney CEO from 1984 all the way until 2005. Eisner comes in with his buddy Frank Wells, and they have big plans for the company. Some things that Michael Eisner brought to you and me would include Disney's MGM Studios, which is now called Hollywood Studios, the Animal Kingdom, the Disney Fast Pass system. He even gave us the first ever Disney cruise line. Eisner also worked to open Disneyland Paris, Tokyo Disney Sea, and Hong Kong Disneyland. And of course, you know, the 2001 Disney's California Adventure, which has been drastically overhauled by the current CEO, Bob Iger. However, Eisner even gave us the Disney Renaissance, you know, those really amazing films that you know and love, like The Lion King. He gave us Star Tours, Indiana Jones, Splash Mountain, and Soarin' Over California, which later would become Soarin' Over the World. Eisner was a visionary leader, to put it lightly, but he also made some interesting and a little bit strange and somewhat misguided decisions out there. Eisner is both celebrated and sort of hated because he made some really weird decisions for Disney, but he also kind of changed and saved the Disney company for better. But he also did some bad things, like his entire debacle with Pixar. But we're not going to talk about the Michael Eisner story today. Today we're just going to talk about one of the weird Michael Eisner things, which is Pleasure Island. Now, one important detail about Pleasure Island is actually it is not at all based on the Pleasure Island from Pinocchio in any form. Like, no tie-ins to that whatsoever. And I know, I would have thought the exact same thing as you would think, that this is of course a tie-in to Pinocchio, even though it's not that dark as Pinocchio. But after listening to a nearly 3-hour podcast from 4 adult men diving into this park's history and their fond memories being there, and watching a Yesterworld video on it, which I do highly recommend both to you, I realized that this is actually based on the very obscure character that I believe Disney made called Merryweather Adam Pleasure. Now, I'm gonna condense what Yesterworld told me in his video on the fictional history of this island, and honestly, a lot of what I'm gonna say today is what I've learned from those 2 sources, so if you would like to check them out, linked down below. But let's get into who Mr. Pleasure is. Mr. Pleasure was an explorer from the 1900s and found himself in Mexico. Here, he had visions of the Funmeister. Now, one thing you're gonna notice is the Funmeister looks like that moon guy, who I'm totally blanking on name because I never grew up with this moon guy, but it was the moon guy from McDonald's, and this guy was popular at the same time as Mr. Funmeister was created. Now, apparently the Funmeister led Mr. Pleasure to Florida because he was an ancient being, or sort of a spirit, the Funmeister was, being worshipped in ancient Rome by tribes. And I'm not joking. This is a real Michael Eisner Disney story that nobody really knows. Even the people that visited here will touch on how this story was there, but not many people recognized it. It's kind of weird. Anyways, on to the super elaborate story that nobody cared about. Mr. Pleasure then went to Florida because the Funmeister soon traveled over to Florida and was worshipped there by tribes. Mr. Pleasure then goes to Florida and found a totem of the Funmeister, like an ancient artifact, which is really cool because the tribe there then would respect Mr. Pleasure, since Mr. Pleasure had like this deity totem of the Funmeister, and that to them signified we should respect this man because he respects Funmeister and might have been picked by Funmeister. Now you might be thinking, what on earth does this have to do with Pleasure Island? Well, Mr. Pleasure got to purchase the island that these tribes seemingly owned or lived on, and so he purchased that because the tribes said, we respect you and love you because you have a deep connection with the Funmeister. So in 1911 that was acquired by Mr. Pleasure, all because of the totem. Mr. Pleasure immediately started doing what he used to do before exploration, putting industries in, a lot of working industries to create product like steel and paper and whatever else he put there, industry. But what would this all do for Mr. Pleasure? Well, it would fuel his exploration journeys. And here Mr. Pleasure went on some journeys, but one day he was lost at sea and he died in the sea, just like that. He went out to sea and there was a thunderstorm and Mr. Pleasure's gone. It's only the spirit of the Funmeister and the two sons of Mr. Pleasure who took over the companies in 1955 and before 1955, but then in 1955 they went bankrupt and lost the entire island. Then Hurricane Connie, which is a real hurricane that hit Florida, in this story destroyed the fictional island and I guess destroyed the tribes as well. I guess it wiped out a part of civilization in Florida. Now, what ended up happening is in 1987, an Imagineer built Pleasure Island. And in the 1990s, we got that. So an Imagineer just kind of discovered the Pleasure Island and built Pleasure Island by the 1990s, which was just a nighttime entertainment district, much like Vegas or the Universal City Walk. Now, as we did say, Michael Eisner is quite the imaginative guy. I mean, honestly, he was a visionary leader, kind of like Walt. I feel like each of the Disney CEOs, except for maybe Bob Chapek, who was the most short-lived one, had to be a visionary leader and an imaginative one who would think, what is best for this company? How can we stay current, relevant, and fun and inspire the guests to dream? And Michael Eisner had his methods of this. And sometimes he really succeeded. Sometimes he messed up more times than Walt. So this was an ambitious project, and like a lot of projects, it was not going to hit that opening deadline that they had already set and promised for of 1988. So they started to cut some places out of the picture just to hit the deadlines. And yeah, we'll touch on that in a little bit. Now you might ask, why on earth is all of this built? Because what purpose does it actually serve? Like, yeah, I guess it's an extra thing for the guests to do, but why, Disney? Well, Michael Eisner was a highly competitive CEO. Eisner's the type of guy to not really buy out the competition, but instead play the game of competing with them by building exactly what they do, but better, and branding it Disney and changing some things. I'll give you two really obvious examples. For one, in Florida, they have Universal Studios Florida. That's kind of like the Universal Studios in Hollywood, just people say the Orlando one's a little bit better. I've never been to either one, but a big staple of Universal Studios is you film movies there. You film them on sound stages. You have a backlot tour. So what did Disney do? They did MGM Studios because they were in like a partnership with MGM, or maybe they owned them or something like that. So they did the MGM Studios where they would film films on the backlot and have backlot tours. So it was basically a copy and paste of Universal Studios. Or try out Animal Kingdom, which was a copy and paste of Busch Gardens. And I've never been to Busch Gardens, but you know what? Michael Eisner created them, and they've definitely changed from their opening dates, but they were pretty successful competitors to the people they wanted to compete with. So you might be wondering, who was Disney trying to even compete with here? Well, Disney actually tried to compete with Church Street in Orlando, which was basically Pleasure Island. Church Street in Orlando kind of was the city walk before the city walk, and would be what Pleasure Island became. Now, May of 1989, the island is open, and it's actually a very, very big hit, which is surprising since it fell into a catastrophe not too far after. Now, one of the more popular places was a 21 and older dance club called Mannequins, where you danced and drank. Here, performers dressed like mannequins, because why not? I don't know why. It was a Michael Eisner decision. There was also the Comedy Warehouse, which was a comedy club where I guess some comics actually did get started. I don't know about any big name comics, but some people got their start there, which is pretty cool. There was also a 3-story building, which was a roller skate town, and you just roller skated. It's kind of like Roller-Rama, you know, like your typical skater rink. This place also had the Neon Armadillo Salon, which hosted new upcoming artists playing live music, but they were all country stars. About a year after opening was, of course, the Pleasure Island Jazz Company, which was live music, but jazz. Videopolis East was a section for the kids, and if you don't know about Videopolis, that is an entire video in and of itself, but the shortened condensed version is it was a failed Disney experiment under Michael Eisner, which was a nighttime club to dance at and have fun, but it was aimed at like kids 21 and younger, people 21 and younger, so teens and young adults, so no alcohol there. Now, the Grand Adventures Club was there, and this is the biggest and last club that we'll talk about, and I believe the last one there. And this was big because it was actually unique. You see, this club wasn't just a nightclub. No, it had its own comedy, animatronics, drinks, a story that actually tied into both the Jungle Cruise and our very own Mr. Pleasure, which I already said nobody cared about the story. We'll get to that in a little bit. But some budget cuts did affect the place, with removing plans for a fortune teller, a live one, not one of those fortune telling machines, that would have been pretty easy, but a live one, and a ghost bar where the Peppers effect from the Haunted Mansion would be replicated in front of you, so you could drink with a ghost. That's kind of cool. The story was stupid. If you look at some of these plaques on your screen, you can read them. I'm not going to read them to you. You could pause the video, but these plaques weren't very intelligent of a story. They were kind of weird and lackluster ways of explaining Mr. Pleasure to people. And honestly, I don't know how people understood the main story of Mr. Pleasure. People kind of just showed up here and were like, cool, nightlife, but Disney. And yes, there was theming here, which we'll get into how it tied it all together, because people do love theming, since Disney is known notoriously for their theming. But over time, that theming decayed. And it's not even because of the crappy story, it's because Disney couldn't keep up with the times. But we got to talk about the shops. Now, there was one very, very big, noticeable, and somewhat adult shop. Jessica's was based on Jessica Rabbit and had a massive Jessica Rabbit sign out front, which was a 20-foot tall neon Jessica Rabbit. Now, this entire shop, Jessica, had lingerie themed to Jessica Rabbit, which is kind of crazy for Disney to do, but hey, I guess Michael Eisner was a very adventurous guy. And the store itself, it didn't really do anything super big. It was a super weird and niche market of just Jessica Rabbit fans, so Disney didn't learn from their mistake and replaced it with the Dick Tracy shop, which failed in about a year as well. Now, Jessica Rabbit would actually take over the Funmeister's position as the icon of the park as that shop, Jessica's, closed, because people wanted Jessica Rabbit to represent Pleasure Island, even though they made the Funmeister. Nobody cared about Funmeister. Each and every night, however, at this event of Pleasure Island, and I mean it, every single night, would end with the New Year's Eve celebration to celebrate the Funmeister's birthday. Because of course, the Funmeister, the man of fun, is born on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. I'm not really sure. I think it's New Year's Day, and that's why we're celebrating, because as the, New Year goes in, that was the very moment the Funmeister came to be, I guess. Now, I don't even know how much this cost them each and every night to shoot off insane amounts of fireworks, have a, I guess, kiddie Mardi Gras party style is what it kind of looks like. People just moshing in the streets, jumping up and down, singing their favorite Disney songs or whatever old songs were there. And when I say old, I'm not saying like songs of the 1990s. I don't think Disney played very up-to-date songs. They were probably playing stuff from the 80s, stuff that was 10 years old already and I guess a little bit dated, or nothing super noteworthy. I don't know what they played there, but it couldn't be that amazing. But the main point is, how much did this cost? I don't know, but that also might be a reason why this thing did not do that well. The island was successful. I said that off the top, but it also became very unsuccessful quite quick. Something I did not tell you was there was a lot of vacant land on the island, and this thing was needing to be filled in. Many failed attempts came and went before and after Pleasure Island was established. But then there was Downtown Disney. Now, the reason the island failed was a lot of different reasons, but a main thing was, as I said, the theming was failing, and it was failing fast. The clubs came and went, new sponsors, I think, for the clubs, because I don't know if you knew this, but Disney has relied on sponsors in the past to loan them money basically and let them build whatever they want, and also so that, sponsor can get product placement. But a lot of these clubs just became dated, and also nobody was really going to dance clubs in the mid 2000s. That kind of phased out, dance clubs were on a dead end, they weren't as popular as they were in the 80s and 90s. They weren't as relevant. So the entire Pleasure Island project became very irrelevant extremely fast because of not great theming and a high price to get in. Now, unlike the two Disney districts of Downtown Disney that were on the left and right side of this island, those were free of charge. But then you had to go out of your way just to go to Pleasure Island with a high price tag. And on top of that, you have kind of lousy maintenance and you get a failed island. This thing really did die pretty fast because it was extremely inconvenient to get to. It was not near the park. If you look at a map today of Disney Springs, that area was basically Pleasure Island, and Disney Springs is a little bit too far from all 4 Disney parks at Disney World. It's a very out of the way experience. So people that were, tourists, which most people are tourists at Disney World, not locals like Disneyland, why would they go out of their way and pay, I don't know, maybe like $50 for this extra experience? It just wasn't appealing. And most people probably didn't even know it was there. Or if they did, they would just be like, no, why am I going to go there? It's not close enough to me. So it was a lot of different reasons for a failed park, or failed experience, whatever you want to call it. Now, Disney, being the resilient company they are, in 2006 changes the cost to all free unless you want to enter the clubs. So what you would basically do is walk around, take in the environment, go shop there, go eat there, of course pay for your meal and pay for your merch. But if you wanted to get in a club, you would have to pay individually. And yes, they did remodel everything, but it still failed. Why, you might ask? Well, of course, it was very costly to go into each and every club. It didn't matter that these clubs were remodeled. People just were not that interested in these. However, safety was the biggest concern. Now, since it was all free of charge, drug dealers, child abductors, people who made pipe bombs and planted them, as well as some very violent stabbers did show up. And I'm not joking. This stuff is pretty well documented once the entire refurbishment went on. So in 2008, due to failed security, safety, failing themes that made the island once such a great place and a hard to get to area, the place was dead. The island was gone. It was no more. In September of 2015, the whole district area where Pleasure Island and Downtown Disney became known as Disney Springs. The entire area renamed. So new stuff was built here, and that's the bizarre story of Pleasure Island. But the video isn't skip over. Now, before we go into this next part of the video, I wanted to offer some context to who Mr. Anycast is. You see, I constructed this entire new Pleasure Island under my name, Mr. Anycast. If you guys are unaware, I host a podcast called Anycast and have been since 2022. I also started Anycast Productions and had a YouTube channel with the name Anycast, so I referred to myself as Mr. Anycast. And in the same light of having the Funmeister, I created myself as a little fun character to present this new Pleasure Island. So with that in mind, sit back, relax, and enjoy my version of Pleasure Island being plussed up. Now, I want to do something really fun here. I want to do something called Blue Sky or Brainstorm. Now, Blue Sky is what the Imagineers call it. You and I might call it brainstorming. I want to make my own Pleasure Island. Let me present to you Mr. Anycast Pleasure Island. Now, our icon would not be Jessica Rabbit or the Funmeister. They're too basic for our island. Instead, it would be Powerline from the Goofy movie, who is actually still a pretty culturally relevant Disney character to Disney fans. And the other icon would be Stitch, who I feel like is a universal icon for a lot of people in pop culture. They just know who Stitch is. Now, the both of them would set the mood for this island, and trust me, this island is going to get very costly and very audacious very fast. Stitch would represent the wild and wacky side of Pleasure Island, while Powerline would show us the futuristic tone that this island would take for it to be a relevant and better park. He would introduce just, all the fun new tech, and we'll get into that. Now, we would have 5 very simple clubs. The first would be the Goofy Laugh House. Goofy's Laugh House would be our very first club, and they would host comics. And on some nights, we would have more child-friendly ones, and on other nights, you'd have more adult-centric comics. Here you can eat some good old American food and laugh as you sip your sparkling water or your martini or really whatever you get. Now, Powerline's Powerhouse would be where guests experience cutting-edge technology such as an immersive VR experience, high-tech escape rooms, and a retro-futuristic arcade with some old games and some new games like, Beat Saber or a VR Minecraft or a VR Fortnite Disney experience. Stuff that's more relevant. And of course, we would have an old-fashioned bowling section of Powerline's Powerhouse with a neon aesthetic. Now, this is one of my personal favorites right here. This would be Stitch's Science Lab, but it would also be the most risky one to build and the most liable, it would make a lot of lawsuits happen. You see, Stitch's Science Lab would be the only educational and innovative area. Now, this might at first seem dumb to you and obscure, but we would actually incorporate the madness of Stitch into a science lab. You could do wild experiments with highly trained professionals, take home souvenirs, maybe deal with space objects with a pre-show from Neil deGrasse Tyson, and of course, we would have a mini theater playing Bill Nye the Science Guy all day, every day. Now, this would actually feel like a more of an Epcot pavilion, which would be kind of good if people went to Pleasure Island before Epcot and went in here, and this was like, hey, this is what Epcot is like. It would achieve the dream that Walt once had of Epcot, or at least one of his dreams of Epcot, just being, relevant and educational and entertaining. Now, this would be a very hands-on and more tech-savvy place than Epcot has ever been, which is why you could manufacture your own personal AI assistant for the very high price of $5,000, and it would basically act like Cortana from Halo or a hologram from Star Wars. Now, the other hands-on creative creation you can make is designing a car however you want virtually for the price of $50 to $100, depending on what you add on. And you could have this fully customizable toy car that's pretty big. And why would it be virtual? Well, we could put more presets and like assets in there, and then they would deliver it right to your hotel. Pretty cool. It would deliver there in like 1 to 2 days. Next, we have Videopolis 2.0, which would split into 3 different sectors: pop, country, and rock. So here we would feature the new songs from Olivia Rodrigo, Taylor Swift, The Weeknd, Ariana Grande, Billie Eilish, and a few others in the pop place. You could even have special theme nights for the 90s or 80s where you'd hear Madonna, Michael Jackson, and Britney Spears. And why not every once in a while have Deadpool come out and randomly dance to Bye 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 with the entire crowd. Now, the country room would feature some more live music from small artists and bands with some new and old country. And we'd also, of course, play some, music whenever a band couldn't make it, such as Joey Roll, Brad Paisley, Megan Maroney, and more. Culturally relevant artists, and maybe even somebody as old as like Johnny Cash. It's just classic staple, or Jimmy Buffett. Now, the rock room would feature a mosh pit of new and old rock and metal, all the while incorporating Animal from the Muppets in here. In the pop room, we would have Mickey and friends in neon outfits and probably Powerline walking around. And in the country room, you would have Woody somewhere. Now, finally, the most important and most expansive one that really transforms this island. I already know I said Stitch's science room, that place would be very expensive and liable and very fun. This gets better. The most important one is the Society of Explorers and Adventurers Club, or the Sea Club. Now, for those of you that do not know, Sea is something that Disney created, and we will make a video someday on it. It's an organization of explorers and adventurers that ties into the films, TV, and most of all, the theme parks. And it's this interconnected universe that kind of gets complex over time. Now, this club would be an homage to the old Adventurers Club, but with sea stuff, Indiana Jones stuff, and evil Jungle Cruise movie stuff tying in, and the Jungle Cruise ride stuff. Now, here you could either sit back and relax, or you could have a new sort of a tiki room show play out with tiki, sea, and tropical birds. You could eat some tropical foods from South America. You could drink tropical drinks. Or you could go and explore the rooms and discover the secrets of both Indiana Jones and Sea, and go on the Indiana Jones quest or the Sea quest. Both would end and intertwine with each other in an epic climactic search for treasure. Ancient South American temple treasure, and a guest appearance from Davy Jones and Jack Sparrow. Jack would help you battle Davy, and yes, this would be a massive deal that would be only on select days and select nights. And yes, this entire journey would expand all across Pleasure Island, and this final climactic event would kind of be like a massive stage show that the crowds could see that weren't even like involved in this. But the kids that, get involved in this quest, and maybe some of the adults that get involved with this quest and go on it, would be able to like assist in the show. And of course, there would be Disney cast members helping them. And this would also segue into the epic fireworks celebration each night that this goes on. Now, as for restaurants, we're going to utilize the characters of Powerline, Baymax, and Stitch for 3 unique restaurants. Powerline's Power Pump would give you very nutritious and healthy food, as well as high caffeine Disney branded energy drinks that may or may not be FDA approved. Big Sushi Bay would be on the outskirts, next to the Bay Area, of course, like on the water. You would dine there, and it would be themed to Big Hero 6 with sushi, and Baymax would be there to greet you. Finally, Stitch's Slop would be the most trashy, greasy, and just over deep fried American food. You'd also get like just disgusting food. Greasy hot dogs, greasy burger, greasy fries. And it would very much be a space environment for Stitch. Shopping would incorporate the remnants of the old Pleasure Island with Pleasure Co., where you can get the retro Pleasure Island shirts and the Funmeister stuff and Jessica Rabbit stuff with the old Disney's 90s movies, such as DuckTales, Darkwing, Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, like all those Disney 90s stuff would be here. And then you'd have a trading outpost style of a shop where you get all your Sea, Indiana Jones, Pirates of the Caribbean merch, and then you'd have a modern space shop with Stitch merch, Star Wars merch, Powerline stuff, and a little bit of Marvel with the Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, I know if you are still watching then you know that I have a very vivid imagination and that this will cost a lot. Now, I am just estimating this price solely off of really two things, but really nothing at all, because a lot of these new Disney expansions that have already been built are kind of dated, the two that I'm going to give you. So I'm going to give you a number, but we're going to base it off of two things, Pandora and Galaxy's Edge. Now, this right here would cost $1.2 billion based on Pandora and Galaxy's Edge expansion. Now, the real reason it would be this much is because of building each building, all the stuff in Stitch's science lab, the cost of running that stuff, the fun stuff in Powerline's powerhouse, and, you know, maintaining this place for at least a few months. The fireworks, the live performers everywhere, the cost of energy would be insane. So yes, it would cost a lot, but I do think it actually could work. Now, the location I have not even shared with you. I think it would be at Disney Springs for a $50 ticket or a $200 season pass for the locals. The island itself would have to be located at Disney Springs because Disney World is greatly benefited by a solar panel farm. That would actually help cut some of the costs. Now, we would build a new solar panel farm somewhere nearby that would eliminate nearly all the energy for Disney Springs and this new Pleasure Island. However, Disneyland could actually work this in. Now, Disneyland has recently secured permits for a third theme park, which looks to be the size of Disney Springs or a bit smaller. So they could potentially condense my idea of this island and attach it there. It would only be hurt by the city of Anaheim, which is very, very strict and concerned with their power grid and pyrotechnics and all the other stuff. So it would more so be better at Disney World. Now, if you have made it here, thank you for watching. That is the story of Pleasure Island, and that was also my idea for Pleasure Island. I hope you had fun learning about Pleasure Island and my idea for a new one. Peace out.